coconut milk in particular, the cans tend to be difficult to open with conventional can openers. Usually you end up having to turn them sideways, or just sort of brute force it and hope for the best, which is, I kind of did both. I not only turned it to the side, but I also just sort of yanked it open. I was just like, yeah. So once these onions have a little bit of color to them and the ginger has started to infuse its flavor and aroma into our oil, that is when we are going to start adding our other stuff, right? We're going to add our larger spices. We're going to add our chili. We're going to let that rock for a minute or two, and then we're going to add our liquids and our chicken, and we're done. So I took the serrano chili, I split it, I slid it twice, so now it's in 4. I'm going to take our, that was an immediate surge of capsaicin, holy crap. We're going to take our cinnamon stick, we're going to throw that in there. It's going to hit the hot oil and gather and start gathering its strength. I'm going to hold off on the bay leaf for another moment or two because these are very thin, they can be very delicate, and I don't want them to burn before I add anything else. So we're going to let this go. Now I could add some garlic, I could add some more ginger, I could add some more chili, but I think I'm good on this, so I'm going to add the bay leaves, I'm going to add my spices and my coconut, and then I'm going to start adding my liquid. I'm going to start with the coconut milk, because there's no reason not to, right? Oh my gosh, this is, the one downside to grinding up nuts is that emptying your spice grinder becomes a bit of a pain in the neck. I gotta turn this way down to make sure nothing burns before I get at this emptied. There we go. And I'm gonna give this one quick stir. Make sure most of the spices and some of the coconut hit that hot oil and continue to get whoosh. And now we add the coconut milk. So what we're doing here is we're building a flavorful aromatic braising liquid. Now, that's only 1 can of coconut milk, so that doesn't look like much and it doesn't seem like much. But that's okay, because we're not done yet. We are going to make up the difference with additional liquid momentarily. Because we're going to add, first and foremost, we're going to add in our chicken. So I added in a little bit of liquid just to make sure all the spices didn't burn while I did the rest, right? This also allows the spices and the chilies a little bit of a moment to infuse. So now we're just going to dump all our chicken in here. If I could do it without causing unnecessary disaster. Okay, there we go. I'm going to run my spatula along the inside and get whatever's left of the marinade, which was, as if you remember from yesterday, it was mostly just yogurt and garam masala, plus salt and pepper and a little bit of mustard oil. So I'm just going to break up all those marinated pieces here. I'm going to stir it around, make sure that every piece of chicken that we cut up is fully separated from its compatriots, so we don't end up having something undercooked or overcooked or whatever have you. While I do that, I'm going to rinse out the coconut milk can and get rid of it, because it was pretty much good to go as it was. Hoik. And now, since it does still look like it needs more liquid, how are we going to fix that? Well, I don't know if you remember yesterday, when we boned out all of these chicken thighs, we threw them in a pot with some water. We threw the bones in a pot with some water to make some chicken stock. Ta-da! That is where we're going to get that extra liquid, right here. Nice fond blanc de volaille in French, or white chicken stock in English. We're going to add probably about a cup or so. No, a little less than a cup. Let's start with about a half a cup. and we'll give it a gentle stir. We don't want to splash. We don't want to make any kind of a mess across the, we don't want raw chicken juices anywhere, right? We got to be careful about this. It is worth the trouble to be cautious, careful, slow, and deliberate when you're doing something like this. I promise. Because the last thing you want is like surprise raw chicken juice somewhere that you didn't notice, and then you make someone very sick, and then you are in a great deal of trouble. Like, for example, there is a drop of chicken juice right over here that's spattered despite my best efforts. So I'm going to have to wash this cutting board very carefully before I use it again. Now, real quick, I'm just going to run my finger along the inside of this spice grinder because there's a little bit more just kind of hanging around in here. The high fat content of coconut resulted in the all the spices and whatnot sort of adhering to the inside of the spice grinder. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it is something that requires attention to clean up. All right, so now we have everything incorporated. We've got enough liquid that it won't be an issue necessarily. Maybe a little bit more, because I would like to braise this for a while. Not too terribly long, but... And also, as the chicken cooks, it's going to release a lot of extra liquid as well. So it won't take, even if this does end up being a little shy on liquid, the chicken will take care of itself. All right, so now we have everything nicely mixed. And it's just about at a simmer. Not quite, but it's almost there. But in the meantime, while that heats up, I'm going to take a second. Oh my god, husky dog, come on. Also, happy birthday. Everybody, go get, wish Cantos the husky a happy birthday. It is cut. I slid it down the middle twice. So the inside is exposed, and it's a serrano, not a jalapeno. But yes, I threw that in there to add extra heat, and also so that I could fish it out later. Yeah. All right. Now, pardon me for just a moment while I do a dish or two. I'm currently cleaning up the marinade. And I'm also going to put away a whole bunch of dishes from yesterday because I ran the dishwasher before I went to bed, and everything that's in the dish drainer right now is now clean and properly dry and can be put away. Mostly a giant pile of to-go containers. Like, I say that, but they're cups, pints, and quarts on paper, even though that a lot of times that's a lie. So I'm going to put those away. Get this out of the way. Yeah, and now we are at a proper simmer. So we can clap the lid on this, throw it in a preheated oven. In this case, I set it to 3 1/4 or about 160 Celsius, and we're going to forget about it for a while. Probably close to an hour, actually. An hour should be enough. So that's done. Yay. Now we can forget about it. So I'm going to set myself a little timer for an hour, real quick. Or at least I would like to. Here we go. And now I will clean that cutting board that I spoke of moments ago. All right. Move some stuff out of the way, get everything ready for a proper cleaning, because cleaning up after raw poultry is usually very important. Like, you got to make sure that everything is nice and clean, nice and disinfected, nice and sanitized. It's important because, as I said yesterday, and I frequently say, one of the most dangerous things you can have in your kitchen is raw chicken, or just raw poultry in general, because it is the most, other than like certain types of greens, it is the most likely thing to be harboring foodborne pathogens. And the only reason that I add that caveat is because of the vast amount of like E. coli scares that have been happening over the last several years for various types of salad greens and related stuff. All right, so that's taken care of. Korma's in the oven. Stations are clean. That's one out of the way. And yes, I've got this as pointing at nothing, but that's okay. So I'm gonna do this. There we go. Ta-da! Now it's pointing at something, sort of. I mean, you'd know better than I do. You're the biologist. It's not that you can't trust leaves. It's that you can't trust people to wash them properly. Because let's be honest here, a lot of places where greens are commonly grown for mass production and consumption are full of people who are willing to take shortcuts. Every agricultural environment is full of people who are willing to take shortcuts, but some people have stronger senses of ethics than others. Or they simply just have different agricultural standards. Like the usage of human waste as a fertilizer is not necessarily a bad thing, but it does create a large amount of potential risks. Just as an example. All right, so now that we have a moment to breathe, I'm going to real quick clean my spice grinder. I'm going to throw a little bit of bread into my spice grinder, and I'm going to grind that up, which basically functions like a wet sponge. It's going to, the starch from it being a piece of bread is going to do a little scrubbing, and the residual moisture is going to, what the hell? Hold on a second. What the hell? Okay, there we go. That was I had an extremely odd moment. I had a USB moment with my outlet just now. But as I was saying, basically what bread does in your spice grinder, the crust functions as a scrubbing agent, and the residual moisture acts as just a general clearing agent, and also an aroma absorption agent. So if you've got some pretty aggressive spices that just came out of your spice grinder, using a piece of bread, or my personal preference is for corn tortillas, actually, but I don't have any of those on hand right now, to sort of grind out and absorb the residual aromatics. It's a good way to clean your spice grinder without unnecessary risks, because there's a lot of spice grinders that you can't put like in the dishwasher, and so you need, plan B to get a a suitable neutral state for your grinding spices. All right, so now that that's in the works, we're going to go back to something else we were working on yesterday, the stroganoff. And honestly, I'm just going to pull it out of the fridge and show you, because it's done. Looks like this. Boom. Now, this may not look super delicious offhand, but it's because I left it uncovered for a variety of reasons. One, additional evaporation to make sure that it got cooled very quickly and efficiently without endangering the rest of the fridge. And also, dry out the surface a little bit so that we ended up with a slightly crispier, crunchier bit of meat, which will happen, which will be advantageous once we heat this back up and eat it. Now, I'm not going to do that at the moment because this is tonight's dinner and I don't want to fiddle with it. But I want everybody to see that this is what it's, ideally, this is what it's supposed to look like. Now, it's pale in a way that it wasn't when it started. Why? Because if you remember, I talked about the final liaison yesterday, adding something to a final fat to enrich, embolden, and intensify flavor. And what was that one? More sour cream. So I took, once the meat was adequately cooked, once this was out of the oven, I pulled it, I took maybe about a half a cup of the cooking liquid, I let it cool a little, and then I stirred in a whole bunch of sour cream and a little bit more mustard, because both of those are delicious. You stir that together nice and easy, which warms up the sour cream slightly, the process called tempering, which again I mentioned yesterday. It's the same notion as when you're using eggs to make custard. You want to bring up the temperature of the delicate ingredient very gently and very slowly so that it doesn't have a negative reaction, like an aggressively negative reaction. Whereas, like if you're using eggs to make custard, you could scramble the eggs, and then you have breakfast instead of dessert. Whereas if you're using something like sour cream or yogurt for something like this, you want to keep it from curdling or crumbling, right? So you take some cooking liquid, you add your sour cream, you stir it till it's nice and evenly dissolved, everything's nice and warm, then you slowly stir it back in until it ends up looking like this. Now, I am admittedly curious. It probably needs a little salt. Not much, but a little. So I'm going to just have a real quick taste of the sauce itself. Maybe not. That's nice. Actually, yeah, that's really nice. Okay, I'm happy with that. Now, I am tasting this while it's cold rather than hot, which you have to be aware of. One of the interesting parts of how your palate, your tongue, and your taste buds approach flavor. Cold food is duller than hot food, at least according to your tongue and your taste buds. So anything that you serve cold has to be more aggressively spiced and aggressively seasoned than something equivalent that was served hot. So if something feels a little bit anemic, a little bit under seasoned when it's cold, but you know it's going to be served hot, you're probably okay. Now, let's see. Oh, that's odd. Oh, I see. Ha. Let's see. What's next? We have our stroganoff. We have our chicken korma. We have... not a whole heck of a lot of other stuff to work on, oddly enough, but we do have the remaining beef. For those of you that may remember from yesterday, that giant hunk of beef shoulder, it's not done. I've got the other half of it right here. Actually, more like the other 2/3 or possibly more. I'm going to put my chicken stock back in the fridge because I don't need it right now. Yes, it was in a very awkward size and shaped bowl to put in the fridge, but at the time, it was suitable. All right, so what do we do with this? Who knows? What do we want to do with this? We have chicken korma, we have beef stroganoff. We need to do something cool with meat. And since it's shoulder, it's going to be a little bit on the... it's one of those cuts that serves better as a slow-cooked item. So I suppose we could just make an old-fashioned pot roast. But the problem with that at the moment is that the oven is full, right? So I think what we're going to do with this is just get it ready for another preparation and stick it back in the fridge for another day. Now, here we go. I'm trying to remember where I put a couple of things. So we're going to take this out of the bowl because this bowl is enormous and was killing my available fridge space. So I'm going to have to wash that later. Not going to do it right now, at least not right this second. Now you notice that let's see if I can. So as you can see, it's gotten a little bit darker in a couple of places. Partially that's because of oxygen, and partially that's because of salt. Hang on, there's a little nubbin of silver skin here I want to deal with. You see what I mean when I was talking about this yesterday. It's like once you start trimming like silver skin and fat and stuff off, you tend to tunnel vision and like not want to stop until you've accidentally gotten rid of like way more than you should have, and you've kind of wasted $10 or so of what would have been otherwise perfectly useful like fat. So I'm going to quite deliberately stop myself from fiddling with this anymore, and we're going to actually do the butchering. With one exception, there's a giant chunk of silver skin right here, and and it's glaring at me. There we go. Okay. So we're going to take our beef, and we're going to, well, for starters, we're going to look at it. We've got this giant honking chunk of silver skin right here running straight through. So that's it's something that we have to be aware of and that we have to do something about throughout the course of our butchering. Now, it's not necessarily a deal breaker kind of problem, but it's something that you have to be aware of and that you have to be willing to work around and work through. So real quick, I'm just gonna, my goodness, like it actually bounced my knife. That's pretty impressive because this sucker is sharp. I actually grabbed one of my backup knives from my knife roll because I haven't had the chance to sit down with a proper sharpening stone and really give my daily choppers the business. All right. So now, as you can see here, see that line? That's some very thick, tough silver skin and connective tissue. We don't want to deal with that. So we're just going to very gently, we're going to slice right next to it, and we're going to see how close we can get without, obliterating our meat. And we're just going to let the knife do the work, because the silver skin, the connective tissue, it's way tougher than the flesh itself, so we don't actually have to worry about it too terribly much. So I'm just going to go straight on down, following the line. I'm actually going to just kind of stab it. And we're going to loosen this up. We're going to open it. And suddenly, we have a very large chunk of silver skin on this side, or of connective tissue, and on this side, because I kind of bisected it, which not necessarily a bad thing, but it does allow me much easier access to the whole shebang. So I can then work my way in, work my way over, and then carve it out. Ideally with minimal loss of actual, edible, viable product. So it's not perfect, but it's way better than it was. And we're going to do the same thing again as I cut this second steak sort of thing out. While I'm working on this, does anybody have any questions on what I've gone over so far? We haven't done a whole heck of a lot of in-depth instruction this morning, but it never hurts. And even if you have something that we haven't gone over, I am here for you. So if you've got questions about food, cooking, life in general, if I have an answer, you can trust it. So we're just going to do the exact same thing again, straight on down through. Ideally on one side, but if you happen to do what I did last time and bisect it, well, that's okay. It's mostly okay. So you open it up, you make it obvious, and then you stab and you cut. Yeah, okay. So now I'm going to do the same thing pretty much on both sides of the large chunk of connective tissue to isolate it, at which point I can then just, hack it out without too much trouble. There we go. All right. All right, that's looking pretty good. Now we have, this is pretty much no different from what you do with like a beef tenderloin when you're removing the chain. So this is something that can be applied to various cuts of various animals. You do the same thing on a pig. You do this. You probably wouldn't have to do it on a chicken because chickens are too small, even now. Though the average chicken is twice the size that it was 50 years ago in terms of what you can get at the supermarket, which is kind of scary. And they are rife with what I call Hollywoods. The modern chicken has enormously large breasts, and that is concerning to me because breasts are the worst part of the chicken. Like they have the most potential utility, but also the least flavor, and so you have to play with them the most to get something viable out of them. All right, so now we have a whole bunch of good chunks. And so now that we have some room to maneuver, we can cut them into more manageable pieces. I'm actually just going to go straight along the line where I removed the silver skin on the bigger pieces so that we can, that sort of gives us a more sharply defined area in which to work. And incidentally, we now have 3 pieces that are about the same size, along with these 2 trimmed ones. Get rid of this chunk and this. Come on, here we go. In the process, I did leave a little bit of that massive chunk of connective tissue in this one, so I just taking a moment to do something about it. There we go. Right. Now we have a whole bunch of meat that I don't actually know what I'm going to do with. I still have no idea. So for now, I'm going to re-season it because in the process of butchering, we've lost a fair bit of the amount of the salt that we put on it the first time. We also have substantially more surface area of the meat exposed to the air. So we have to re-season it to make sure that the preservation continues. So we're just going to very gently season this with salt on every large exposed surface. We're going to throw it right back in the fridge, because now it's much more manageable than it was 5 minutes ago. Take these, I'm going to mash them in here, boom, boom, boom. Oh, and this little container takes up so much less room than the giant bowl that I was using before. It's like if you need to make something small, cut it into planks or strips. That's a great way to ensure things get nice and uniform. because a big ball like that shoulder cut, you just kind of have to let it sit. But if you cut it into steaks, you can stack them, or you can lay them flat, or you can do a whole bunch of other things that will allow you greater utility in terms of placement, storage, and frankly, just in general. So give me just a second to wash this bowl, which I'm actually pretty happy that I bought this because we didn't have a mixing bowl, and now we have a mixing bowl. But what we can't do with it is a lot of stuff. It can't go in the microwave. It can't go in the dishwasher. It can't go anywhere near the oven. It's a cheap $3 plastic mixing bowl, but I don't care. That's fine. As long as I can mix stuff in it, that's good enough for me. So now we have our meat, we have it wrapped, we have it seasoned, and now back in the fridge she goes. Hooah! Now let's see. We are going to take a moment to clean off everything here. Real quick, I'm just going to wipe out my knife. I'm going to clean the cutting board because there's raw meat all over it, and we really don't want to have to deal with that. Now, do we? So the next question is, since I am serving the stroganoff for dinner tonight, probably, and the korma tomorrow, what on earth am I going to serve it with? So, since I made this for just the two of us, my boy likes egg noodles. He's a very big fan of stroganoff with a giant pile of egg noodles, and I'm a-okay with that. But that even though that there's a fair bit of vegetable matter in the sauce, there's a lot of nutritional value in the sauce itself. It's not enough, in my mind, to qualify as a complete meal. Oh, you had a sandwich, now go have another. You should go have another. Or possibly some soup. Or maybe some dumplings. I don't know. For those of you that do not know, my mod there, Cantos the Husky, he's a very good boy, but he tends to undernourish himself. And as a chef, that bothers me slightly. Okay, so now I have a breather. Oh no. What? Have you not arranged a dentist visit yet? Come on, dog. If I end up getting to the dentist before you do, you will not hear the end of it. Because I have had a cracked tooth for almost 5 years, and I haven't been able to get to a dentist yet. You had better hustle. All right. Confounded dog. All right, so now that we have a breather, let's talk side dishes. So egg noodles are all well and good, and I am usually on board with those, but I need a little something more, right? Because they say meat and potatoes for a reason, but I want to do a little something else. So we're going to take this carrot, and we're going to work with that instead. Might actually roast off a couple of potatoes too, but first and foremost, we're going to start here. Now this carrot is kind of it's kind of on its way out, but it is still more than adequate for the purpose. So we're just going to peel it. We're going to do a little bit of knife work, and we are going to. I'm not even going to roast it. I'm actually going to prepare what's called a courbouillon. By which is a courbouillon is basically just a French for a quick stock. So the stock is the liquid in which many things are cooked, or that are it's what you use to make pretty much everything. It's just liquid that has flavor. Well, yes, I know, but that's what weekends are for, right? Alternatively, you're on your spring break. Ahem. So, for processing a carrot, honestly, there's not a whole heck of a lot to it. We're just going to, for start, I'm just going to do what we call the roll cut. So you take a, yeah, every dentist and orthodontist, most of their business is teenagers. When are they going to be available? Weekends. So when you start, let's see, what's the best way to show this off? Something like that. I'll go over here. So you start here, you do an angle cut, then you roll it 90 degrees, and you do it again. You roll it 90 degrees so that the angle is just like this, and then you cut it like so, and you continue to do that until you run out of carrot. Now this is a pretty useful way to get not uniform but consistently sized vegetable cuts out of something like root vegetables. So they all have the same sort of wonky wedge shape, but they are all about the same size and shape. And 1 carrot is plenty enough for the 2 of us, so we are going to prepare a courbouillon. We're going to begin with water, obviously. Hold on, I did a stupid. We begin with cold water. Let's swing back to the stovetop for a second. There we go. We're going to put our carrots in the cold water because that is how you do things when you are trying to cook them. Especially root vegetables, you always want to start them, if you're going to blanch them or boil them or whatever, you want to start it in cold water. Why? Because that will ensure a more even change in temperature. So we're going to add a bunch of salt to this water. We're going to add some sugar to this water as soon as I remember where the hell I put my sugar. Here we go. Yes, I know this looks weird. This is piloncillo. This is basically the Mexican brown sugar. It's wonderful. I love the stuff, but it's made, a lot of times it's made like old style. The reason that it's in a cone shape is because that's where it goes, because it's poured into molds. Did you really just, oh my God. I'm going to get you for that, Husky. All right, so the biggest downside to something like piloncillo is that it is, in fact, in a single piece, right? Like, if you want to use it for something, you kind of have to chop it up yourself. And sometimes that gets difficult because it's very tough. But I got away. I got a pretty much maybe a piece the size of maybe three quarters, like U.S. quarters, or maybe $3 silver. That might be closer. I'm gonna throw that in there. So we have salt, we have sugar, I'm gonna throw in a bay leaf. Why? Because I have them, and because they are an affordable source of both flavor and aroma. If I could remember where the hell I put them, because I did not put everything away yet. Bear with me for just a second, everybody. Here we go. Grab a bay leaf, shove it in here. So this is a great way to get a lot of flavor that doesn't necessarily get wasted. So we have salt, sugar, we have bay leaf. I'm going to add a little bit more water. Actually, yes, I'm going to add a little bit more water, and then I'm going to turn this on. The reason I only want just enough water to cover all of the things that I am planning on cooking here. So in this case, it's the carrots. I want all of them to be covered with the necessary liquid. And I'm going to bring this up to temperature on like medium, low. Why? Because again, I want the temperature of the carrots to rise gradually so that the outside isn't mushy, but while the inside is still crunchy and raw. Again, I do talk a lot about doing things slowly, and most people will grouse about it because they say they don't have time to do that. Sure you do. Like I have this going. I don't have to pay attention to it, right? Also, remember, what else am I doing? I currently have the korma in the oven as well. So it's like I'm doing multiple things at once without having to necessarily pay attention to either of them, which is always helpful. Like the less brain power you have to allot to something in a kitchen, the better. Especially for those of you that don't cook much or don't think you cook too terribly well. Like if you have things that you can do comfortably, easily, and consistently, those are great things. Straight up. I'm going to wash all of the miscellany off of my cutting board, which wasn't much. It was just a little bit of brown sugar and a carrot peel. That's whatever. So now we have a clean cutting board. We have some carrots on its way up to blanching land. Now, what am I going to do with those, though? The reason that I'm blanching them is to get them almost cooked. Or rather, I'm not necessarily blanching them. I'm poaching them. I'm going to be poaching them. And that's fine. So we want these to be cooked about 95% of the way. So when it comes time for dinner, I can just pull them out of wherever I've stashed them, throw them in a hot pan with a little bit of butter, pinch of salt, grind of pepper, bing, bang, boom. As soon as they're hot, they're done. And you can do this with large quantities and stash it in the fridge for 2 or 3 days if you happen to want the same vegetable as a side dish for a few days. And in this case, it's a pretty neutral poaching liquid. So if you wanted to do, like, you could throw that in a pan with some butter, some ginger, and some chili, and some garlic, and it would be delicious. You could throw it with some onion. You could throw it in there with some toasted cumin and some sumac, and it would be delicious. You could throw it in a pan with some bourbon and brown sugar, and it would be delicious. And you would never think that they started out in the same way. At least not really. Now, as for me, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with these. It might just end up being butter, salt, and pepper, because stroganoff in particular is pretty robust in terms of flavor. There's a lot going on with beef stroganoff, and I don't necessarily, and any vegetable that I pair it with is going to be kind of overmatched. Yes, yes, you do. It's my. This is my default tea mug. I don't drink from anything else. Oh yeah, did you Husky, did our birthday card show up? If not, go check your mail. Let's see. So we've got our carrots on our way to poaching. The brown sugar that's in here, the piloncillo, is almost fully dissolved, which is fine. It didn't have to be fully dissolved when we first got started, but now it should be closer. Wonderful. All right. So now we have stuff for tomorrow, stuff for today, stuff for tonight, Now, what else can we do while we're at it? Let's consider the chicken korma for a second. What do we want to do with alongside that? So we have, it's got some pretty aggressive flavor. It's got some pretty, it's got a passable amount of vegetable matter. It's got meat, it's got dairy, it's got spice, it's got, but it doesn't have much in the way of vegetable matter. So, and I don't have a whole heck of a lot of just general veggies on hand. Doran, right? I have just the thing, as a matter of fact. So, there is, oh, excuse me. There is a dish called Doran, which is most commonly and most well known for being made with the equivalent of like green beans, or a lot of times it would be more like Chinese long beans. You cut them into small pieces, like maybe 1 centimeter or length, and then they are cooked. It's basically a dry curry. You get its spices, its chili, its garlic, sometimes it's garlic, and it's coconut. So it's a savory green bean and coconut dish, but uh, I found it's much easier to make year round if you use frozen peas, because not only does that save you a boatload of knife work, but it also saves you the trouble of finding fresh beans year round, which can be a bit of a hassle sometimes. So that's one of those cool things that you don't. It's a good way to save yourself a little bit of trouble without sacrificing quality. Because fresh versus frozen, in terms of something like that, like most frozen products, individual stuff like peas or corn, those are all the product of what you call bumper crops. Now I've mentioned this before, but it's ditto for tomatoes in particular. Um, at the end of the growing season, the the stuff that's about to ripen that the markets know they can't sell, anything over their projected sales, they will send for processing to be IQF, individually quick frozen, where they are sprayed down with a basically a frozen brine to be flash frozen and then bagged and stashed. So, and they are done at the pretty much the peak of their ripeness and flavor. So it's not a super. There isn't much in the way of loss of quality, if any, really. So I'll take frozen peas over fresh peas 9 times out of 10, especially if I have to process them myself. Because if you ever had to shell peas or like Romano beans or favas or something like that, you don't want to. Like, I don't know how stuff like that ever managed to end up as a popular component of modern agriculture, because it is such a pain in the ass. Related, if somebody asks for favas, IQF edamame are pretty much indistinguishable, but you didn't hear that from me. So, which reminds me, I also have to start doing some menu planning and start making my shopping lists, because I have a very large catering event to do at the end of the month down in San Mateo. Somebody contacted me through for a baby shower at a because I'm the default catering guy for a small event venue down in San Mateo, even though I moved a long way off. Uh, I haven't gotten things basically since the pandemic began back in 2020, and this will be the first one since then. But they want it's a fairly small venue, and they've got it booked to capacity, and they want a lot of food. So Plus, their menu is actually pretty comprehensive as far as that goes. They wanted an Asian-esque menu. Actually, I should dig it up in just a second. I suppose I can share it with you. There we go. Found it. So what they want from me is so this is a list of stuff from my not from my catering menu per se, but this is variations on a theme, right? So they want my sesame and hoisin glazed salmon with the ginger and roasted pepper relish. They want a lot of that. They want some Japanese style vegetable curry. They wanted a vegetarian. They wanted another vegetarian dish, so I recommended a mushroom mapo tofu. So I don't know which. I've made that on stream a time. I make mapo tofu somewhat regularly, or at least I used to on stream, because I love the stuff. But for those that do not, for those of the vegetarian persuasion, there tends to be meat in it normally. But if you grind up a whole bunch of mushrooms, you basically make duxelle. It works out just fine as a substitute. And then you have I mean, it's more expensive technically because most mushrooms by the pound are actually more expensive than the meat I would be using, and that's concerning. And also, you lose a whole heck of a lot more water, so you're going to end up with substantially less bulk. So it's like you've got the hoisin salmon, the veggie curry, the mapo tofu. They want a whole bunch of garlic sesame greens, and then they want my skewers. They want my chicken my wait, was it? Oh yeah, my Thai jungle curry chicken skewers. They wanted my Mongolian barbecue pork belly skewers, and they wanted some generic fruit skewers, all of which are delicious. But they also wanted my one of the cool things. The reason that I thought of it just now is they want my edamame hummus-ish, quote unquote hummus with crispy wonton chips. Which that's a great way to get if you don't like chickpeas, or if you don't like the Egyptian version, which is made with fava beans. Holy crap! I don't recommend and trying that, especially if you have to shell the favas yourself. Which, when the garbanzo or the chickpea wandered its way into North Africa, everybody who was in charge of dealing with the favas was probably just like, oh. Thank you. What a relief. Because processing garbanzos is way the hell easier than processing favas, just as a general rule. But anyway, it is a lot of skewers, but it's about 30 people. So I suppose I could take a moment and we can talk about my catering methodology here. So the big stuff, I tend to offer in half pans versus full pans. Like, I have your standard chafing dishes. For those of you that are familiar, it's the stuff that you see on like hotel breakfast buffets. Those things with the sterno. I have a couple of those. That's the so you can put either one big tray or two small ones. Usually it'll be these. Like, these are disposable versions of those same trays. Same size, same depth, same can hold the same amount. So I tend to offer in half pan or full pan. And usually if I do full pan, it's just going to be 2 half pans, because these are much easier to manage and to store. And if you have one that's really big and full of really heavy stuff, it's much more likely to bend, to tear, or to just fall, even if you happen to support the bottom. And always support the bottom. So basically they're going to get at one of these full of all of the large stuff that I mentioned, like the salmon or the curry and the mapo tofu. And then the skewers, I sell those by the piece, right? With a guaranteed minimum number of whichever item, which is a lot of times that's how catering works. If you have to, you either sell it by either by the pound, by the tray, like those, or by the piece, which for the smaller stuff, like the hors d'oeuvres or skewers, or all of the little stuff that people, the munchies. Now, these in this case, like for example, I offer the price per skewer, and then I require a minimum of 10 skewers per item, that's just me covering my bets, making sure that somebody's not going to order like two skewers of everything, which means I have to buy enough product that I don't actually make any money on the deal. Right? It's like if they order 10, I can budget accordingly and make an appropriate, give a reasonable price and enough that I can make a little bit of a profit on, which is the hard part most of the time, because frankly, prices of almost everything, even at industry, even not at retail, even at like industry or wholesale, they are through the damn roof. It is mildly ridiculous how much people are spending on just general like staples nowadays. It's a little bit crazy. Since I just moved, the local Safeway, I notice, is actually, it's designed for a different community. Like the produce section is much smaller, the prepared food section is much larger, and the portions of what's available are much smaller. Like you're not going to be able to get like the prepackaged pound of cheese, like sliced cheese. You're going to be able to get the half pound, or for example, you're not going to you're not going to get the pound of prepackaged deli ham. You're going to get like the 6 or 7 ounce ones. And there's a whole heck of a lot more like prefab stuff in the meat cases, in the deli cases, in the frozen aisles. It's a very interesting contrast, and it's a little worrisome. Right, so where was I? All right, we're starting. Our corbouillon has started to. Wait, what the heck did I just do? Did I just do something by accident? Crap. Well, thank you for the follow. Oh, dearie me. Well, thanks. Welcome, welcome. Husky eyes on, would you? Oh, hello, Albert. Welcome, welcome. What brought you here? I don't often get surprise followers, although that leads me to believe that I may be wandering on the front page of Twitch in the food and drink category, because sometimes they will just randomly scroll through people who are actively streaming in various categories, and I have been known to show up there from time to time. They try and often fail to promote smaller streamers, but sometimes they try, and that's a start. Yeah. Pardon me for just a moment while I clean some stuff up. I gotta dry off my cutting board. I gotta dry off my countertop, because I have done a whole lot of washing up, because there has been a whole lot of raw protein over here which requires some fairly robust cleaning. Yeah, Now I need to let it dry.